A house can look clean in the morning and feel messy again before dinner. The dishes return, shoes appear by the door, a sweater lands on the chair. Mail sits on the table. The kitchen counter gets covered with things that were only supposed to stay there for a minute. That is one reason the old 1950s home feels so interesting now. Many of those homes were smaller than the homes people live in today. They had fewer cabinets, fewer storage bins, fewer cleaning sprays, fewer machines, and far fewer organizing products. Yet people often remember them as tidy, controlled, and ready for company. That does not mean life was easier. For many women, the pressure to keep a perfect home was heavy and unfair. But hidden inside that pressure were practical systems. The house did not stay orderly because there was more space. It stayed orderly because small habits were repeated before mess had a chance to grow. If you like remembering the old household wisdom that mothers and grandmothers used without making a big speech about it, subscribe and stay with us. These simple routines are easy to overlook, but they explain why some homes always seemed cared for. Number 1, they cleaned as they went. This may be the most important forgotten habit of all. In many 1950s homes, cleaning was not saved for one giant rescue mission at the end of the week. A woman cooking dinner did not wait until every pot, spoon, peel, wrapper, and bowl had piled up before she touched the mess. She wiped while the soup simmered. She rinsed the mixing bowl after using it. She put the flour tin back before pulling out the next thing. It was not fancy. It was not called a system. It was simply the way work moved. A dish towel hung nearby. The sink was used constantly. The counter was treated like a workspace, not a storage shelf. If something spilled, it was wiped before it dried. If crumbs fell, they were brushed away before someone walked through them and carried them into the next room. Modern homes often work the opposite way. People cook, rush, eat, leave the kitchen, and tell themselves they will come back later. But later, the mess has hardened. The pan is crusted. The counter feels crowded. The whole room looks worse than it really is, because every small task joined together into one big one. The 1950s habit worked because it stopped that chain reaction. One wiped counter did not feel heroic. One rinsed bowl did not feel like a cleaning day, but those tiny actions kept the house from sliding out of control. That is the quiet secret. A messy home is often not made by one big failure. It is made by dozens of tiny things left for later. Number 2, the bed was made before the day truly began. In a 1950s bedroom, the bed was not just furniture. It was the largest object in the room, and it decided how the room felt. If the bed was rumpled, the whole bedroom looked tired. If the bed was made, even a small room felt calmer. Many women treated bed making as one of the first signals that the day had started. Sheets were pulled straight. Blankets were smoothed. Pillows were placed back where they belonged. It took only a few minutes, but it changed the room immediately. This mattered even more in smaller homes. Bedrooms often had fewer closets, smaller dressers, and less private space. There was not much room for visual disorder. One unmade bed could make everything feel crowded. A made bed gave the room a center. There was also a mental side to it. Once the bed was made, it was harder to toss clothes across it. It was harder to crawl back into a lazy morning. It made the bedroom feel like a room being cared for, not a place where the day had been abandoned. Today, many people skip the bed because they are busy. That makes sense. Mornings are rushed, but the old habit was never really about impressing anyone. Most visitors would never see the bedroom. It was about beginning with one finished task. One small order created another. Did your mother or grandmother make the bed every morning, even when nobody was coming over? For many families, that habit was so ordinary that nobody explained it. You just saw it happen. Number 3, the kitchen sink was reset again and again. The sink was the heart of the 1950s kitchen. It held the evidence of every meal, every cup of coffee, every peeled potato, every lunch packed, every pan scrubbed after supper. If the sink was full, the kitchen felt defeated. If the sink was empty and wiped, the whole room seemed ready. That is why many women guarded the sink carefully. Dishes were not allowed to sit endlessly. A cup was rinsed, a plate was washed. The dishpan was emptied, the faucet area was wiped down. The dishcloth was wrung out instead of left in a soggy heap. The sink was not treated as a place where mess went to wait. It was treated as a place where mess was finished. This habit had power because the sink affects everything around it. When the sink is full, cooking feels harder. Wiping down the counters feels completely pointless when the sink is still full. Even making tea or breakfast becomes annoying because the room already feels behind. But when the sink is clear, the kitchen feels usable. You can fill a pot, wash a vegetable, rinse a glass, start the next meal without first facing the last one. A clean sink also made the home feel more prepared. In the 1950s, company could stop by with less warning than many people expect today. A neighbor might come to the back door. A relative might appear in the afternoon. A clean sink helped the kitchen look cared for, even if there were still chores waiting somewhere else. The old rule was simple: do not let yesterday sit in the sink. That rule protected the whole kitchen. Number 4. The apron was used as a working tool. Today, an apron can look like a decoration from an old photograph. But in many 1950s homes it was practical. It protected the dress underneath. It saved laundry. It wiped hands. It held a clothespin, a tissue, a recipe card, a small toy, or a stray button found on the floor. An apron created a boundary between housework and the rest of the day. When it went on, work had begun. When it came off, the woman could feel, at least for a moment, that one kind of labor was done. That mattered because clothing took more care. Many women did not own endless casual outfits. Washing, drying, ironing, and mending clothes required time. Protecting a clean dress was not about looking perfect. It was a way to avoid making more work later. The apron also helped prevent mess from spreading. Instead of wiping wet hands on a skirt, there was cloth ready. Instead of carrying every tiny object one by one, the apron pocket could hold them until they were returned. Instead of changing clothes after every kitchen task, a woman could keep moving through the house. Modern homes have replaced some of this with paper towels, cleaning wipes, extra clothes, and laundry machines that run constantly. But the apron solved a simple problem before it grew. It kept the worker clean while the work was messy. And that is the larger pattern behind these first habits. The made bed, the clean sink, the wiped counter, the apron pocket, none of them were dramatic. None required expensive storage or a weekend cleaning marathon. They worked because they caught mess early. Once the kitchen work was under control, the next challenge was where everything belonged when it came through the door, landed on a table, or slipped into daily life without anyone noticing. Number 5. Incoming items had one landing place. One of the fastest ways a home becomes messy is not through dirt. It is through small things with no clear place to go. Mail, keys, coins, receipts, a church bulletin, a school paper, a grocery list, a pair of gloves. One item lands on the table, then another joins it, and before long the room feels cluttered even if nothing is truly dirty. In many 1950s homes, there was often a stricter sense of where these things belonged. Not always a fancy organizer, not a labeled tray. Sometimes it was a small dish on a dresser, a drawer near the telephone, a hook by the door, or a corner of the kitchen where the household papers lived. The point was not the object itself. The point was the rule. Keys did not travel all over the house. The mail did not sit on every flat surface. Coins did not stay in coat pockets until wash day. Little things were gathered before they spread. This mattered because older homes often had less extra space. A small table could not afford to become a storage unit. A kitchen counter might be needed for supper. A chair might be needed when someone stopped by. When space was limited, every surface had a job. Modern homes often give clutter more room to hide. A larger entryway can hold more shoes. A bigger counter can hold more mail. A spare room can become the place where decisions are postponed. More space can feel helpful at first, but it can also delay the moment when the mess demands an answer. The 1950s habit worked because it made small decisions automatic. When something came into the house, it was not allowed to wander forever. It had a landing place, and from that landing place, it either got handled, stored, or thrown away. That single habit could protect the whole home from feeling scattered. Number 6, they put things away before sitting down. This one sounds almost too simple, but it carried a lot of weight. In many homes, the small task was finished before the rest began. A coat was hung before sitting in the kitchen. Shoes were placed where they belonged before settling into a chair. Groceries were put away before anyone relaxed. The shopping bag was emptied, folded, and saved or thrown out before it became part of the room. The habit was not about being stiff or joyless. It was about momentum. Once a person sits down, the unfinished task becomes harder to face. The coat on the chair no longer looks urgent. The basket in the hallway can wait. The items on the table become background. A person gets tired, the evening moves on, and the little mess becomes tomorrow's problem. Many 1950s women understood this without naming it. They knew that a job half finished had a way of multiplying. If the groceries were left out, the counter could not be used. If the coat stayed on the chair was no longer ready. If the clean laundry stayed in the basket, it wrinkled and ironing became worse. So the small ending mattered. This habit also taught the household how the home worked. Children saw that things were not dropped wherever they fell. Husbands, children, and visitors may not always have followed the rule perfectly, but the rhythm of the house made the expectation clear. A home had places, a room had a purpose. Rest came after the small reset, not before it. That does not mean every woman loved living that way. Many were tired, many carried too much of the work, but the habit itself still has wisdom inside it. A 2-minute task done now can prevent a 20-minute cleanup later. Think about how many modern messes begin with the phrase, "I'll put it away later." That one sentence fills counters, chairs, dressers, cars, bags, and laundry rooms. The older habit answered before the mess could grow. Finish the landing before you leave the spot. Number 7. Surfaces were treated as workspaces, not storage. A kitchen counter was for making food. A dining table was for meals. A dresser top was for a few needed things. A coffee table might hold a lamp, an ashtray, a magazine, or a small dish. But it was not meant to become the household's dumping ground. This was one of the quiet reasons many 1950s homes looked neater. The surfaces were protected. A clear surface changes the way a room feels. It gives the eye a place to rest. It makes cleaning faster. It makes the room seem ready. A table with nothing extra on it can be wiped in seconds. A counter with only the tools needed for cooking can be used right away. Modern clutter often begins when surfaces lose their job. The dining table becomes an office. The kitchen island becomes a mailroom. The bedroom chair becomes a closet. The bathroom counter becomes a shelf for every product used in the last month. Once a surface becomes storage, the room has to work around the mess. In many older homes, this was harder to allow because the same surface was needed several times a day. The table had to be cleared for breakfast, lunch, and for homework and sewing, letter writing, and supper. The counter had to be ready for peeling potatoes, rolling dough, packing lunches, or setting out coffee cups. There was less room for a surface to be permanently buried. This is one of the strange gifts of having less space. It forces a decision sooner. A 1950s woman might not have called it minimalism. She probably would not have used a modern word for it at all. She simply knew that if the table was covered, dinner became harder. If the dresser was crowded, dusting became slower. If the counter was full, cooking became irritating. The habit was not to own nothing. Homes still had lamps, family photographs, doilies, candy dishes, vases, sewing baskets, and little decorative pieces. But there was usually a stronger boundary between decoration and disorder. A few chosen things made a room feel cared for. Too many loose things made it feel neglected. Do you remember an older home where the table always seemed ready? Not empty in a cold way, but ready to be used. That readiness was not accidental. It came from protecting the surface before it became a pile. Number 8. The junk drawer was allowed, but it was contained. It is easy to imagine the old home as perfectly tidy, with every pin, pencil, receipt, and rubber band in its proper place. But real homes were never like that. Families have always had little odd things that do not belong anywhere neatly. Spare buttons, matchbooks, string, tape, a pencil stub, a screwdriver, a key nobody can identify, a receipt that might matter later, a recipe clipped from a newspaper. The difference was that the mess often had a border around it. A single junk drawer could hold the small chaos of the household. It was not spread across 5 rooms. It was not allowed to take over the table, the counter, the mantel, and the hallway. When someone needed a rubber band or a pencil, they knew where to look. When something had no clear place, it had a temporary home. This is a very human habit. It admits that no home can be perfectly organized. There will always be awkward items. There will always be things that are useful but not pretty. There will always be a few objects that resist neat categories. The old system worked because it did not demand perfection, it demanded containment. Modern homes often suffer because there is no single place for the awkward things. A screwdriver stays on the windowsill, batteries sit in a bowl, receipts live in a purse, pens hide in every drawer. Tape disappears until someone buys more. Then the house has duplicates of things it already owns because the old ones were never gathered. A contained drawer prevents that. It says, "This is where the loose ends go." Of course, even that drawer had to be cleaned out sometimes. A junk drawer that never gets touched becomes a small museum of forgotten decisions. But as a daily habit, it solved a real problem. It gave disorder a small box instead of letting it claim the whole home. And this is where the 1950s home system becomes more practical than perfect. The goal was not to remove every sign of life. The goal was to keep life from spilling into every corner at once. The mail had a place, the keys had a place, the table had a purpose. The awkward little objects had a drawer. Once clutter was contained this way, the larger chores became easier to handle. Laundry, floors, bathrooms, and the front room could follow a rhythm instead of waiting until the house felt beyond repair. Number 9. Laundry had a schedule. In many 1950s homes, laundry was not something that simply appeared whenever the basket overflowed. It had a place in the week. Some families had a wash day. Some had a day for ironing. Some sorted laundry by need, by fabric, or by what had to be ready first. The exact routine changed from house to house, but the idea was steady. Laundry was handled by rhythm, not panic. That mattered because laundry took more effort than it does for many people now. Clothes were not always tossed into a machine and forgotten until a beep sounded. Washing could involve sorting, soaking, wringing, line drying, folding, starching, and ironing. Even with better machines becoming more common, laundry still demanded attention, so women built rules around it. Sheets were changed on a certain day. Towels were gathered before they became a problem. School clothes were checked before Monday morning. Work shirts were washed, dried, and pressed before they were needed. Mending might be done before the garment returned to the drawer, because a missing button ignored today became a small emergency later. The habit was not just do laundry. The habit was to prevent laundry from becoming a mountain. Modern homes often have more clothes than older homes did. More pajamas, more towels, more casual outfits, more workout clothes, more bedding, more throw blankets. That can feel like comfort, but it also means the laundry can grow quietly for days before anyone feels the cost. A smaller wardrobe forced a faster answer. If a child needed that shirt, it had to be washed. If a husband needed work clothes, they had to be ready. If the good tablecloth was used on Sunday, it could not stay crumpled in a basket for a week. That pressure was not always pleasant. It often fell unfairly on women. But the routine itself carried a practical lesson. Laundry is easier when it has a regular path through the house. Dirty clothes go to one place. Washed clothes move forward. Dry clothes get folded. Folded clothes return to drawers. The longer one step waits, the more the whole system starts to drag. A 1950s woman did not need a plastic mountain of baskets in the hallway to know this. She could feel it the moment the rhythm slipped. Number 10. Floors were touched often, not deeply cleaned rarely. The broom was one of the quiet tools of the old household. It stood in a corner, behind a door, in a pantry, or near the back entrance. It was easy to reach because it was used often. A floor did not have to be filthy before it was swept. Crumbs after breakfast, dust near the doorway. Bits of thread after sewing tracked dirt from outside. Ashes near a stove or dry leaves carried in on shoes could be handled quickly. A few minutes with a broom kept the mess from traveling into every room. That is an important difference. Dirt spreads. A crumb on the kitchen floor becomes grit in the hallway. Mud by the door becomes a stain on the rug. Dust under the table becomes dust on socks, then dust in the bedroom. The old habit of quick floor care was not about making the house perfect. It was about stopping movement. Many women in the 1950s also used small rugs, mats, and entry habits to control dirt before it got far. Shoes might be wiped, a mat might be shaken, a porch might be swept. The area near the door might get attention because that was where the outside world entered the home. Modern cleaning often waits for a bigger moment. People schedule the deep clean, buy the special mop, run the vacuum when the room looks bad, or wait until the weekend. But by then, the dirt has already traveled. The job feels larger because it was allowed to spread. A quick sweep does not feel impressive. It does not make a dramatic before and after picture. But it changes how the house feels underfoot. Older homes often had hard floors, linoleum, small rugs, and spaces that could be swept without moving 20 objects first. That helped. But the real habit was attention. If the floor showed signs of daily life, it was touched before the mess became part of the room. This is also why clear surfaces and contained clutter mattered. A floor is easier to sweep when shoes, toys, bags, and papers are not scattered everywhere. One habit protected another. The house stayed manageable because the work was connected. Number 11, bathrooms were wiped before they looked dirty. A bathroom can become unpleasant very quickly. Toothpaste dries around the sink. Water spots mark the faucet. Soap leaves a film. Towels fall crooked. Hair gathers where nobody wants to see it. A bathroom may still be safe and usable, but it can look messy in a way that makes the whole home feel uncared for. In many 1950s homes, the bathroom received small daily attention because it had to. There was often only one bathroom for the household. That meant the room worked hard from morning until night. Everyone used it. Guests might use it. There was no extra bathroom hidden upstairs to absorb the mess, so the room had to be kept ready. A woman might wipe the sink after washing, straighten the towel, rinse the tub, put the comb back, close the medicine cabinet, empty a small wastebasket before it looked full. These were not large cleaning jobs. They were little resets that prevented the heavy scrub from becoming miserable. This habit mattered because bathroom mess hardens. Toothpaste that could be wiped in 5 seconds becomes stubborn later. Soap film becomes harder to remove. Damp towels create odor. A crowded counter makes every morning feel rushed and sloppy. The old bathroom often held fewer products too. A toothbrush, toothpaste, soap, a comb, shaving supplies, cold cream, powder, a few medicines, towels, and maybe a small shelf or cabinet. There simply was not room for 10 bottles around the sink. That limit helped the room stay cleaner. Modern bathrooms often carry the weight of modern choice. Skincare, hair care, medicines, cosmetics, styling tools, backups, travel bottles, half-used products, and things bought because they might be useful someday. The counter becomes crowded, then wiping it feels like a chore, because everything has to be moved first. The 1950s habit was not only to clean the bathroom, it was to keep the bathroom easy to clean. That difference matters. A room that is easy to wipe gets wiped. A room that requires 10 minutes of moving bottles gets ignored until it looks bad. There is a simple wisdom in that. The less a room has to carry, the easier it is to care for. Number 12. The front room was kept guest-ready. Many 1950s homes had a room that carried the public face of the household. It might have been called the living room, the parlor, the sitting room, or simply the front room. The name changed, but the rule was clear. This room was not treated like every other room. It was protected, held to a higher standard. Children might play there sometimes, but not in a way that left it destroyed. Shoes were not tossed there. Laundry was not folded and abandoned there. Newspapers might be stacked neatly, not scattered. Chairs were straightened. Ashtrays were emptied. Pillows were adjusted. The room was kept ready because company could arrive with less warning than people expect today. This habit can sound strict now, and sometimes it was. Children in many homes knew exactly which rooms were for daily roughness and which rooms required better behavior. Women felt judged by the condition of that public space. A messy front room could feel like a personal failure, even if the rest of the day had been full of work. That pressure deserves honesty, but the practical habit still had a purpose. One calm room changed the feeling of the whole house. Even if the kitchen was busy, even if laundry was drying, even if bedrooms were not perfect, the front room gave the family a space that felt settled. It gave guests somewhere to sit. It gave the home a face. It created one area where order was protected from the constant movement of daily life. Modern homes often blur every space together. The living room becomes an office, a snack area, a laundry station, a playroom, a charging station, and a storage zone. That may be necessary in many households, especially where space is tight. But when every room carries every job, no room feels calm. The old habit asks a useful question. Does your home have even one place that is protected from overflow? It does not have to be formal. It does not need plastic covers on the furniture or a room nobody is allowed to enjoy. It can simply be one table, one chair, one corner, or one room where things return to order at the end of the day. That protected space gives the eye a place to rest. And in the 1950s home, that was part of the rhythm. Laundry always had its own special day. Floors were touched before dirt traveled. Bathrooms were reset before grime settled. The front room was kept ready enough that a visitor did not send the household into panic. But the deeper reason those homes avoided mess was not only cleaning, it was ownership. There was less coming in, less waiting around, and less left open at night. The habits that ended the day were just as important as the ones that began it. Number 13, buying less meant managing less. One of the most forgotten reasons 1950s homes often looked neater is also the simplest. Many families owned less. Not because everyone was naturally more disciplined, not because every woman loved living with limits. Often there was less money, less storage, fewer stores nearby, fewer deliveries, and fewer reasons to buy something new every week. That limit changed the house. When fewer things came through the door, fewer things had to be washed, folded, dusted, stored, repaired, moved, and organized. A smaller wardrobe meant fewer clothes on the floor. Fewer toys meant fewer toys underfoot. Fewer kitchen gadgets meant fewer drawers full of pieces nobody could find. Fewer cleaning products meant fewer bottles crowding the cabinet. A 1950s woman might stretch the life of what the family already owned. A jar could become storage. A dress could be mended. Leftover fabric could become a patch, a cloth, or something useful. Food was planned more carefully because wasting it felt expensive. A purchase was not just a purchase, it was another thing the home had to absorb. That is the part modern life often hides from us. Every object asks for space. Every object asks to be cleaned around. Every object asks to be remembered. Today, a home can fill up without one dramatic shopping trip. A package arrives. A sale feels too good to ignore. A new storage bin promises to fix the old clutter. A beauty product is half used and replaced. A kitchen tool is bought for one recipe. A toy comes home because it was cheap. Nothing looks like a problem by itself, but together, these things create a house that is harder to manage. The old habit was not perfect. Some families went without things they truly needed. Some women had to be careful because they had no choice. But the useful lesson remains. Less coming in means less falling apart. A home is easier to keep when the door is guarded. Number 14. The evening reset closed the day. In many older homes, the day did not simply collapse into bedtime. There was often a small closing routine. Dishes were finished, the table was cleared, the sink was wiped, chairs were pushed in, shoes were moved, newspapers were stacked, toys were gathered. The stove was checked, the kitchen light was turned off on a room that looked ready for morning. This was not always peaceful. A woman may have been tired, her feet may have ached. She may have wanted nothing more than to leave the pans until tomorrow. But she also knew what tomorrow would feel like if the house woke up behind. That is what the evening reset protected. Morning is hard enough without yesterday's mess waiting on the counter. A sink full of dishes changes the mood before breakfast even begins. A table covered with papers makes the first meal feel rushed. Shoes by the door make everyone trip. A living room left scattered makes the whole house feel as if the day never properly ended. The old evening habit was not about perfection, it was about closure. Even 10 minutes could change the home. Put the cups in the sink or wash them. Next, fold the throw neatly over the sofa arm. Clear the table, return the broom, hang the dish towel. Set the breakfast bowl where it belongs. Wipe the counter once. These small actions told the house the day is done. Modern life often loses this boundary. People work late, eat late, scroll late, and fall asleep with the home still open around them. The kitchen stays half used. The laundry stays half folded. The living room holds the evidence of every hour. Then morning begins in the middle of yesterday's unfinished business. The 1950s evening reset worked because it respected the next morning. It did not make the home spotless. It made the home startable. That is a very different goal and a much kinder one. A startable home does not require perfection. It only needs enough order that the next person who wakes up can move without immediately cleaning first. Number 15. Tomorrow started tonight. This habit reached beyond cleaning. Many women prepared for the next day before the house went quiet. Clothes might be laid out, shoes checked, lunch items planned, breakfast dishes set near the stove, a school paper placed where it would not be forgotten, a husband's work shirt pressed, a handbag checked, a grocery list written before the next errand. It was a way of removing decisions from the morning. A rushed morning creates mess quickly. Someone cannot find socks, so drawers are opened and left that way. Breakfast is hurried, so dishes scatter. A missing paper sends everyone searching. Clothes get tossed on the bed. The kitchen becomes a traffic jam. The whole house absorbs the panic. The old habit prevented that by moving some of the morning's work into the quieter part of the evening. Again, this was not magic, it was preparation. A woman who knew the family schedule could see where the next day might snag. She could place things in the path before anyone needed them. She could make the home feel smoother, not by doing everything, but by making the next step obvious. There is something almost invisible about that kind of work. When it is done well, nobody notices. The shirt is simply ready. The lunch is simply packed. The list is simply by the door. The child simply has what is needed. The morning simply moves, but that smoothness was created by someone thinking ahead. That is why these habits deserve respect. They were not just cleaning habits, they were thinking habits. They connected 1 hour to the next. They treated the house like a living place where every small action either helped the next moment or made it harder. A 1950s home was not perfect. Many women carried a heavy burden to make it look that way. Some had very little help. Some were judged by standards that were exhausting and unfair. We do not need to pretend that pressure was good, but we can still learn from the systems that worked. The clean-as-you-go habit, clean while you work. The made bed, every single morning. The reset sink, clear and sparkling. The apron pocket, always have a cloth ready. The one landing place, a home for everything. The protected surfaces, keep your furniture nice. The contained junk drawer, order in the small things. The laundry rhythm, keep it moving. The quick sweep, a little bit every day. The wiped bathroom, sparkling surfaces. The guest-ready room, prepared for anyone. The careful shopping, stick to the list. The evening reset, sleep in a tidy home. The idea that tomorrow starts tonight. Together they point to one larger truth. An orderly home is rarely created by one huge cleaning day. It is created by small decisions made before the mess has time to spread. The answer may not be more storage, more products, or another weekend spent catching up. It may be one old rhythm brought back into the day. A counter cleared before dinner. A sink emptied before bed. A chair kept free. A basket finished instead of abandoned. A drawer that holds the loose ends instead of letting them scatter. If this brought back a memory of a mother, grandmother, aunt, or neighbor whose home always seemed ready, if you enjoyed this, please subscribe before you go. There are many more forgotten household habits worth remembering, not because we need to live exactly as they did, but because some of their ordinary wisdom still works. Maybe the old homes felt different because they were not waiting for a perfect day to get under control. They were cared for in small moments, again and again, until order became part of the room.